안녕하십니까. 닥터스 팁 이지
Hello
핸즈온의
everyone, this is
김경원입니다.
Dr. Kim Kyung-won of Doctor's Tip Easy Hands-On. Let's take a look at OssBuilder KIT. As you know, the OssBuilder KIT released by OssDem is a titanium mesh type and has a 3D preformed design. Using OssBuilder, you can do GBR more easily. Let's take a look at the characteristics of OssBuilder KIT. As you know, OssBuilder has multiple 3D preformed designs and it's a titanium mesh. And you can choose depending on the alveolar bone defect and choose the amount of bone graft and choose your OssBuilder accordingly. Also, you can do GBR at the same time as implant placement. When immediate implant placement is difficult, you can do two-stage surgery. You can use tenting screw to do GBR and then place the. It has multiple specifications and multiple usages. Second is, as mentioned earlier, you can do GBR at the same time as placing the implant. You can do GBR accurately with OssBuilder. Because of the titanium's rigidity, more so than other GBR concepts, you can maintain space. That's the OssBuilder for you. Third, in the case where implant immediate placement is difficult, you can do GBR and then place the implant. You can use tenting screw to get horizontal and vertical augmentation in the alveolar bone. Let's look at OssBuilder KIT's components. It is composed of 4 items. First, on the recipient site, you need to measure, and this is the gauge for that. Second is OssBuilder component. These are the components of OssBuilder, and for installation, you need anchor cap and healing cap, and it's all included here. There's the drills for tenting screw and driver. Fourth is the auto bone collector for auto bone collection. First is the gauge for measuring defects. Easily put, the site where you want alveolar bone graft and do GBR, you can horizontally and vertically measure the alveolar bone defect. It's like a ruler. As you can see, it has laser markings, and thick laser marking shows 4 and 5 millimeter, and the next 9 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 13 millimeter, and 15 millimeter. So you could easily measure the defect size up to 15 millimeters. Next, OssBuilder component. In order to connect OssBuilder on fixture top, you need an anchor for that. The height of the anchor, basically, it is from 0 to 3 millimeters. When you choose your implant for the defect, you anticipate that there will be bone resorption on the top. You need to factor that in and do graft sufficiently. In my case, I normally choose an anchor height of 1 millimeter, and this OB anchor can be divided into 3 different types: TS, KS, and US. Most people use TS, and anchor for that is also prepared. The basic anchor, the height ranges from 0 to 3 millimeters, and this anchor also can be connected using 0.9 millimeter hexa driver, so you could easily connect the anchor to fixture. It is rare, but there are people who use US, and there's the one for that. There's also anchor design for the newly released KS implant. Next is a cover cap. In my case, when I use OssBuilder, the principle I use is primary closure when I do GBR, so I use cover cap most frequently. I use this for GBR when we get primary closure. In other words, when I can close without tension sufficiently, I use cover cap. When there is sufficient soft tissue coverage, if you do accurate periosteal releasing incision, you'd be able to get primary closure without tension, and in those cases, you can use cover cap. Cover cap, you can use TS and KS together, and there's a separate cover cap for US. There is a hexa on the top for US type, so it's a bit thick. The cover cap, when you use 0.9 hexa driver, you'll be able to easily tighten it and apply it. Next is healing cap. Unlike the cover cap for OB anchor, when there is lack of soft tissue coverage, the so-called transmucosal GBR, on the top, like healing abutment, there can be exposure. When there's lack of soft tissue, you can use this method. When you do transmucosal GBR, you can use healing cap like this. And TS and KS, they're compatible to each other, and there's also one for US type. The diameter is 4.0 and 5.0, and the height is 3.0 and 4.0. Next is tenting screw. In a bone that you cannot place fixture and do two-stage GBR without fixture using tenting screw, you'll be able to do augmentation. On top of tenting screw, you can connect OssBuilder and fixate it. The length of tenting screw is 8.5, 10, 11.5 millimeter, and in general, because it needs to be fixated firmly, depending on bone quality, you can adjust the depths. Let me give you an example. If you use 8.5 millimeter tenting screw and drill 5 millimeter, you'd get 3.5 millimeter of augmentation. If you use 13 millimeter tenting screw and drill 5 millimeter, you'd get 8 millimeter. If the bone is very hard and you just do 3 millimeter, you'll be able to do more augmentation. But basically, if you use 13 millimeter screw and drill 5 millimeter, you get 8 millimeter of vertical augmentation. Next is machine screwdriver. This can be used to install tenting screw and tighten OB anchor. Using engine, in other words, connected to handpiece, and there's also 0.9 hex driver without implant placement, and when you connect the tenting screw, you can use this. As mentioned earlier, you can use this for OB anchor. The recommendation is approximately 25 RPM. The next is hex-handed driver. The hex-handed driver available these days, I use 1.2 when I place implants, and there's a 0.9 hex driver. You can use this for connecting OB anchor, cover cap, or healing cap for OssBuilder. Next is tenting screw drill. As mentioned earlier, you can do GBR procedure using tenting screw. In order to connect the tenting screw, you use this drill. There's 10 millimeter and 13 millimeter drill, and diameter is 1.0 and 1.5 millimeter. You can control depths using the laser marking. You can adjust the length easily, so there's a stopper for that. It has the same specification as cast drill stopper. If you use the blue, the 3mm, you go in 3mm. The purple, 5mm, you go in 5mm. And for yellow, you go in 7mm. You can choose the drill length using the stopper, and you'll be able to control that. When you fix tenting screw, the depths can be adjusted using stopper. So it's very easy to use. Next is auto bone collector. You'd be able to easily harvest autogenous bones. Intraoral donor site, regardless of where it is, you'd be able to easily gain autogenous bone chips. The maximum length is 4mm. There's a shield, so without causing harm to anatomical structure. For instance, if you do it on the posterior mandible, you'll be able to get it without harming the inferior alveolar nerve. Basic diameter is 5.0 and 6.0. When you harvest, RPM is approximately 300 to 600 RPM. Next is bone ejector. When you use auto bone collector, the bone chip, when it is inside the metal sleeve, you'll be able to get them out easily. It has this shape, so you'll be able to get it out very easy, and I'll show you at the hands-on. Next is specification of OssBuilder. Basically, I showed in case 1. On the buckle, if there's dehiscence or fenestration, you can use it. In the case 2, buckle and proximal defect. Case 3, buckle and lingual defect. Case 4, buckle, lingual, and proximal. In those cases, you'd be able to have some options and make your choices. When you use jaw builder, this is the same. On number 5, you can attach to fixture, or for case 6, you can use tenting screw without implant fixture to connect it. There are multiple options. You can measure the defect that you want to treat and choose the OssBuilder that fits. Let's look at the measurements. Basically, buckle depth. Horizontal depth is approximately 5.5mm. Upper anterior or lower posterior on buckle side, you'll be able to cover horizontal defects sufficiently. Proximal walls depths or buckle wall widths, lengths of buckle. There are multiple sizes available in different shapes, so you'll be able to use CT to check out the defect and choose the option that is available. You'll be able to use OssBuilder in different ways. This is jaw builder. You can use it on top of implant fixture. When you don't use fixture in two-stage surgery, you can use tenting screw, horizontal, vertical on both sides, and lingual. You'll be able to use it in multiple ways because there's different height and width. You can choose depending on the defect size. This is a blueprint in assembling OssBuilder. At the very bottom is fixture, and on top you connect the anchor. After that, you can connect the OssBuilder 2 or jaw builder OssBuilder 3, and then you connect the cover cap or healing cap. When you do not place implant on top of tenting screw as shown, you can connect it and then connect OssBuilder, and then you won't experience any problems. Let's look at easy hands-on. Today at Easy Hands-On, OssBuilder 2 will be used to place implant and GBR will be preceded. After that, tenting screw will be used. OssBuilder 3 is going to be used for two-stage GBR. Tinting screw will be connected and OssBuilder 3 will be used for GBR. The case for OssBuilder 2 is upper anterior. Implant will be placed. OssBuilder will be chosen and applied, and suture is going to be done. OssBuilder 3 case in lower posterior, I'm going to measure the defect. Because immediate implant placement is impossible, I'm going to do two-stage. In the case I do GBR, I connect the tenting screw and adapted bone graft and apply OssBuilder. And after that, I'm going to do suture. I'm going to show you the hands-on practice shortly. OssBuilder KIT related hands-on practice will begin. Number 11 is missing. TS3 diameter 4.0 by 11.5 millimeter implant has been placed. After that, using OssBuilder, GBR will be conducted. In order to check the defect, I'm going to use the OssBuilder KIT. On the bottom, there is a gauge. There's a defect gauge, and using this, we'll be able to assess the defect. And you can also measure vertically. Anchor height of OB anchor is 1.5 millimeter. And OB anchor, when you prepare like this, there's a separate packaging. I'm going to use a 0.9 hex driver. Using this driver, anchor is going to be removed. On 0.9 hex driver, you can connect the OB anchor. If necessary, on the OssBuilder KIT, there are different heights of anchor. You can get them ahead and you can select your choice. Using OB anchor on fixture, I'm connecting it. Diameter. OB anchor height is 1.5 millimeter. OssBuilder is one hole. As you can see, on the area to be connected, I'm going to put it on. Check it. I'm going to do GBR first. Graft material. When you use OssBuilder, the screw on top of the anchor, if the graft material goes in, cover screw cannot be tightened thoroughly, so you need to be aware of that. Clinically, as I mentioned the last time, where it meets the fixture, I use allograft, and on top of it, I use it in order to maintain space. I use xenograft. I do layer graft, sandwich graft. As you can see, bone graft has been done labially over 2 millimeters using 0.9 hex driver. Here's a cover cap. There's healing cap as well. I'm going to use cover cap. OssBuilder is going to be placed in the desired position. OssBuilder should be fixated using the 0.9 hex driver. I'm going to tighten it, and we're done. In the case of OssBuilder, because it's titanium mesh, it is good for space maintenance, but when you do GBR and when you want to prevent soft tissue from coming in, you can use a resorbable collagen membrane here. As you can see, resorbable membrane. If necessary, as shown, on top of OssBuilder, resorbable membrane like OssGuide should be used. Collagen membrane should be used for coverage, and if you do suture, even if the patient has thin biotype, membrane will not be exposed and healing can be done very well. Next, I'm going to use tenting screw and use OssBuilder 3 and do GBR. On the lower posterior region, there's a defect. I'm going to do an incision. I'm going to make an incision slightly more lingual than crestal and do subcrestal incision. Next, I'm going to do vertical releasing incision. The model has a severe atrophy. The mucosa, I'm going to do tagging suture. As you can see, the defect is huge. If implant placement is very difficult, using OssBuilder 3, I'm using OssBuilder 3 at this point. I'm going to put it on the defect. As you can see, it fits well, very accurately. I'm going to position the tenting screw and do marking. As you can see, OssBuilder 3 has been connected. Before you do tenting screw, choose tenting screw drill diameter 1.0 and choose 5mm stopper, and the drill length will be 5mm. Diameter 1.0 drill and 5mm stopper will be connected, and as you can see that the drill length is 5mm. Safe drilling is possible, as you can see in the marked area. Drilling is done. There is a machine driver for tenting screw. Connect it to handpiece. Change to placement mode, as you can see. Diameter 2.1 by 10mm tenting screw will be used and connected to machine driver. On the drill hole that was created earlier, tenting screw will be placed. Now I'm going to do placement. I am drilling 5mm. As you can see, the tenting screw has been placed in the desired position. The OssBuilder that I chose earlier, I'm going to apply once again like this. As you can see over here, I'm going to do bone graft. I'm going to put sufficient amount on top. On lingual side, place sufficient amount of bone graft. And I'm going to connect the OssBuilder 3, OB3. I'm going to use cover cap now. As you can see, it's connected. It's done. In the desired position, there's a screw and OssBuilder 3 has been placed. Up until now, we did hands-on practice on OssBuilder KIT, and I'm going to look at some questions. The first question is the criteria for choosing height of OB anchor and the height that I prefer. I mentioned this earlier, but in the case of OB anchor, for TS3 type, the height ranges from 0 to 3 millimeters and it increases by 0.5. When we place in the upper anterior, the TS implant is placed deep. For aesthetic prosthesis, so overall I tend to place implants deep. Therefore, in my case, OB anchor height should at least be 1 millimeter or somewhere between 2 millimeter as well. At today's hands-on, anchor height of 1.55 millimeter was used, and I normally use 1.5, 2.0 OB anchor. Basically, submerged implants like TS3, I tend to place it more deeply, especially in the upper anterior region. If necessary, in the upper anterior region, I would use 1.5 or 2 millimeter anchor. Second question. When you use OssBuilder, on top you have used a resorbable membrane. Do you always do that? That is the question. In my opinion, today in the upper anterior region, I placed the implant and I connected OssBuilder. So hands-on was rather short and placed a resorbable membrane. The OssBuilder is titanium mesh. So in terms of GBR, it does not prevent soft tissue from growing in. After we do OssBuilder, after 6 months, and as we do second surgery, you see that soft tissue covers the entire OssBuilder. Therefore, OssBuilder is good for space maintenance in terms of GBR, but we cannot prevent soft tissue from going in on top. There's no such function, especially in thin biotype, with the oral mucosa on the top is rather thin. I think it's better to use collagen membrane and other resorbable membrane so that you can prevent OssBuilder being exposed in the future, and you'd be able to gain more thick oral mucosa on the top. I tend to use a resorbable membrane on top of OssBuilder to do better wound management, and that is how I use it clinically. Next question. I am curious about how I use bone ejector in the autobone collector. In the previous lecture, I talked about using autobone collector and doing bony ejector. I forgot. I'm going to show you briefly. So if you look at the OssBuilder KIT on the bottom, you can see the ejector. On OssBuilder KIT, autobone collector, there's 2 diameters, 5 millimeters, 6 millimeters, and using 5 millimeter autobone collector, I'm going to harvest. As you can see, connect to the engine and pull the metal sleeve up front, and then the tip is barely showing. I'm going to use the autobone collector to harvest bone, and bone chip will be gained in this. You can see that it is collected. Pull. As you can see, as shown, bone chip is gathered here. Remove the metal sleeve. I've removed it. The chip within the metal sleeve, you use bone ejector to get them out. This has been the Doctor's Tip Easy Hands-on Practice for OssBuilder KIT. That's it for today. Thank you for watching.